discussion that we are about to have is all on the theme of internet in banking and financial services. In recent years, the number of financial services around banking has literally exploded, which has led to a decriminalization of the finance industry. With a myriad of third parties, how are banks, new age fintech companies, insurance companies gearing up to offer a new age banking experience to the world? Well, the panel here are going to put that all to rights and give you the answers to that question and many more, I'm sure. Please welcome to the stage Brad Whitfield, the co-founder and chairman of Cashee, Neeraj Gupta, the CEO of Policybazaar UAE, Ravi Gupta, the founder and CEO of SafexPay, Dr. Ullas Rao, Professor of Finance and Program Director for Business and Finance at the Heriot-Watt University in Dubai, Javed Akberali, the co-founder and managing director of Wellx, Sharad V K, marketing director of Century Financial, Saji Abraham, the head of client services at Middle East Zurich International Life. And the panel will be moderated by Anish Trivedi, the founder of Alenka Media. The panel are eagerly making their way to the stage, and Anish is on the way as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, your panel, give them a warm round of applause.
Are you going to be here?
Perfect. Thank you, Lee. Always a pleasure sharing a stage with you. Now, I do need to qualify a couple of things about this session, and the first is that for those of you who are looking at your programs, you'll see that I'm not the person who is supposed to be moderating, but they do have me, and so do you. The trouble is that I spent 15 years as an investment banker at a time, as I was telling the panel, when a Bloomberg terminal was about as high-tech as you could possibly get, and we still use telex machines to do trades. We're looking at changes in the financial industry, in insurance, in all financial products in some form or the other, where technology is being embraced not just to make your lives better as the people providing the financial service or the product, but to make lives easier for a new breed of consumers that you're all reaching out to. So if I can start, just round the panel very quickly, what are the innovations, what are the new products that you're seeing that are going to attract people to that insurance, to the financial services, to stock markets, using the technology that you're all planning on bringing in? So,
yeah, I can talk specifically from an investment perspective. The whole investment world has changed with the financial apps that have come, investment apps that have come. So basically, after the pandemic, what has happened is there's been a total shift in terms of the profile of the investors. Earlier, there were so many entry barriers in terms of the minimum investment and all. So during pandemic, the whole lot of young investors have come on board. And that has happened thanks to the investment apps, the companies like Robinhood, Sarva, Stashaway. All these people have made the entry investment very low because they are not carrying much cost. Unlike us, where we had a traditional model, there were a lot of investment advisors, the research team backing, so you're carrying a huge human cost and an infrastructure cost. But everything being online now, thanks to the apps, you can start investing at as low as $100, and suddenly it has opened up the market to a lot of these youngsters who anyway are exposed to the kind of gains one sees on global markets. You have influencers talking about it. You have so many YouTube videos about how to start trading and make 10x and all, which is not the reality though, but then they are wooed by all this. So suddenly this has opened up a whole lot of market to a new generation of audience, which traditionally, typically we used to focus on, say, about 35, 40 plus kind of an audience, now has opened up to almost about 20 plus or even much earlier. So that's been one of the major shifts, and the whole trading app and the investment app has changed the market and opened it up. The other thing being even payment wallets. This has suddenly made it so easy for people to start investing. They don't need to do the bank transfers and everything else. So that's another thing. The cryptos have totally changed again the whole payment scenario. That's another thing that's really brought in a lot of EA's convenience, and the young audience has suddenly opened up to investing. And we are seeing the volumes that are coming through them.
Perfect. Saji?
Yeah, I think I agree with him. So I think over the last, since COVID, there's been a lot more, what you call, awareness around the importance of financial planning and insurance and investments. So like he said, earlier on, it used to be a case of, the age groups 35 and 40 more conscious about insurance and protection. But now it's the other way around. You got even youngsters actually keen on protecting, what they've got. So there's a lot more awareness around this since COVID, and I think a lot of the companies have done a lot of work around this. And specifically for us, we've seen the kind of new customers that's coming to us are more of the younger generation. Yeah.
That's interesting, Javed. You're trying to reach that younger consumer by making them more health conscious, by introducing prevention is actually better than cure.
Yep. So yeah, I think there's been an interesting evolution in the way people perceive value. I think our parents, the generation that came before us, were very brand-centric. They were very loyal to their brands. My father worked for 40 years in Kodak, the yellow and the red brand. And I think that generation needed to do what they did because they were, in a fight for survival, and then everyone sort of found their space. The millennial that came after were a very lazy generation, right? We're known to be one of the laziest out there. And so convenience was born, and innovation started tilting towards convenience. The Ubers of the world were born in allowing us to call a taxi without having to, even raise our hand. But I think the generation that's coming today is very value-driven and very motivated by what it is they're able to get from their providers. I think that the concept of loyalty has really changed to a shared value model. And so consumers are really looking today, and I think it goes beyond sort of generational thinking. Consumers overall are looking today for products and services that are able to bring value back to them. And if you look at it from our perspective, from an insurtech perspective, people are not looking to buy an insurance. Nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, I want to buy an insurance. So when we went around trying to figure out how do we build this ecosystem, we realized that people do not want to fall sick. And I think the pandemic taught us that it didn't matter what my limit was on my insurance program or what hospitals I was able to go to. If I had worked on my immunity a little bit better heading into the pandemic, I would be able to fight with this virus a lot better. So I think post-pandemic, with the fragility of human life coming to the fore, people have started to look after their health a lot better. And prevention has become there's this movement around prevention all over the world. The well-being industry has sort of spiraled globally. And you're now looking at a whole host of well-being players out there. And what we do is connect the financial services space to well-being to actually deliver that value for clients. So through Wellx, if we're able to keep people happy, reduce their healthcare costs, help them bring their premiums down, through insurers like Zurich, you're creating a win-win strategy for everybody. Everybody gets to win. People get sick lesser. Nobody wants to get sick. Insurance companies get better profitability. And it's an all-round win for everybody. So that's the way we've positioned it. Prevention is always better than cure. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. My parents used to tell me that all the time. It's just something that, history repeats itself.
Ullas, you're the only one on the panel who doesn't have a product or a service to push over here. You're seeing things from a more holistic view rather than a specific silo. What are you seeing in not just in the insurance part that we've just spoken about, but also other financial services about fintech in general? What's the world embracing?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, so I have the opportunity of looking at, from a helicopter view in the sense. So I think, we are living in very exciting time. And, the previous speaker was talking about the significant demographic dividend, be it countries like Saudi Arabia or India, all of which are part of the G20. And, very interestingly, we have observed that there is a significant traction of the young population moving into a lot of saving and investment products, where they are not necessarily risk averse, but they want to take, a calibrated risk. To that extent, if there are products and services, that could encourage them, to put more of their capital onto the equity side, something like mutual funds and so on. Definitely, I think we are looking at a game changer scenario here. So very interestingly, unlike, let's say the older population, this, segment of the population will be more interested in, products including the cryptos and so on. And obviously, all said and done, whether we love it or hate it, this story is here going to stay. So what are the ways and means in which, we can capture their interest into some of these products which, come with the amalgamation of technology as well as the sound, financial product, which can expose them to some risk and therefore a higher return as well, because they are not the traditional deposit holders. And if anything that is going by with what is happening around the world currently, it does mean that, we need less of deposit holders and more of equity holders. So why not tap our young friends into this particular segment and come up with some innovative product or services? Yeah.
Ravi?
Hi, thank you. Basically, there are lots of innovation which has happened in terms of if you talk about a digital world. So we are more of a B2B fintech company, right? So I have seen a trend of payments, the way the customer journeys has been opted over a period of time, right? So if you talk about some of the examples, right, the way we used to do the shopping earlier, right, where we used to go to the stores, right, to see the product, then try the product, then make the payments, right? So we have seen the evolution over a period of time. Now, the way of making the payments, right, has been changed, right? So earlier we used to do the payment using your card, right, and then you can go to any physical stores. Now, during the COVID, we have seen a lots of contactless payments which have been grown, right? A lots of people can do and buy the financial services while sitting at home, right? So we have seen the evolution of overall fintech and the digital age, right? Where we have seen a lot of products, a lot of customer level journeys have been built over a period of time. Like now, let's talk about example, like if you wanna buy an insurance, right? So generally we used to go, the guy used to come to your house, then he used to do a lot of paperwork, then he will tell you about the plans and everything. Now how the journey has been changed over a period of time, right? You can go basically on the website or onto the mobile app, you can just register yourself, it will do all your calculation, it will tell you everything, right? And then you can buy the insurance using your digital payment mechanisms, right? The payments now, apart from your basically the POS, the eCommerce, which is more of a contactless based payments, now the payment has been moved to some of the new initiations like of the facial recognition based payments, which we have seeing the next legs of growth. Plus, the payments are also moving in terms of like a blockchain, tokenization based kind of a things. So these are the things which we're going to see over the period of next few years. Thank you.
Perfect. Neeraj?
Hi. So how we look at it is, I believe that we classify consumers into two segments. One is the consumer, which is really transacting with us, which is the millennials. And then there is the Gen Z, right? Which we believe will become our consumers. Because we are in an industry where we need to cater to certain age groups and all. But what we are seeing in our industry, at least is from a millennial perspective, is pre-COVID to now, a consumer wants everything digital. And he wants it at his own time. And what we are also looking at now is he wants more individualistic things. From a perspective like, if I am looking at an insurance product or a banking solution, what is in it for me? It's not about the consumption. I'm not going to use an insurance. Nobody wants to use that. Having said that, but what he's looking at, if I don't use the insurance, what's the benefit of me, right? Why am I buying this product? And similarly, if I'm going to bank with you, what is it in it for me? And what we are now seeing, at least from an insurance perspective, is we're moving towards an individual-based rating. Typically, what we would see on an insurance side is it's more of a group-based underwriting, right? But what we are heading towards is, for example, Neeraj Gupta has XYZ assets. He has his own health condition with the likes of Wellx and everything coming in. Now you have an individual health score also, right? Now, the insurer or the ecosystem is tomorrow going to decide, okay, how do I insure Neeraj with everything? I believe we are heading towards that. And similarly, I believe the Gen Z population, which is going to become the consumers of tomorrow for a product like us, they are definitely heading towards that, right? I'm sure my colleagues who address that population will probably agree with that. Those consumers are looking for themselves. They want, was it in it for me? How am I different? How you're looking and treating me differently from the other consumers, which was not the case earlier, right? You were part of a brand, you would typically go for that. Right now, you're moving away from that. You're moving to a level where the consumer is saying, I'm your consumer, I want to become your consumer, what are you going to do differently for me, and at my convenience. So those are the things we are looking at.
Brad, you're trying to create teenage banking in a region where there has been no teenage banking.
Correct, yeah. It's, when you talk about actually innovation, I think a lot of people immediately think about the actual technology itself. I think the biggest change that I've seen and what's going to really drive us forward is more of a mindset change, actually. Be it at a regulator level, sort of enabling the technology to have a positive impact. But more importantly, in the actual incumbent space. You know, I'm launching a teenage bank, and I think when I speak to my banking partners, we're partnered with BankFab here, ANB in Saudi Arabia, and they are now acknowledging that, you know what, we're an old school bank, we cannot speak to teenagers. So they're changing their mindset and saying, okay, we are now open to this kind of partnership because we know, and I'm glad you talked about Gen Z, we know that without having the focus on these particular segments, if they're just going to merge into part of our own ecosystem, we will not succeed. It needs the focus, it needs that kind of attention. So it's the biggest sort of innovation is really sort of from a real mindset place, you know, bringing in partners, bringing in technology, being open to having this kind of approach.
You know, one of the interesting points that's coming out of all of this is we're really not talking about fintech. We're not talking about selling insurance to mom and dad the way it used to be, because at the end of it, those are the people who know that they need savings and they need some equity, and they, you know, 40% here and 30% there, and of course they need life insurance and medical insurance and all of that. We are talking about actual marketing rather than fintech. It is creating a new consumer for the kind of products that those consumers have never embraced before. So whether it's Brad and you're talking about a new ecosystem in a country that never had that, where you've got the government in one sense as a partner saying we need to look to the future. Javed, you're looking at consumers saying we need to bring a new lot in, let's gamify it a bit and make it more exciting for them, right? And Saji, you've got the most old school product there is.
Yeah.
How do you, as Zurich, say, all right, we also need to be on the same platform as Javed, as Brad, in creating that future consumer, even if he or she is not one now?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Zurich is one of those traditional insurers. We do carry a lot of legacy baggage, if you want to call it that way. Now, one of the things that we've been focusing on is innovating our services, right? Because that's what our customers are wanting now. So, you know, customers today, when it comes to satisfaction, it's all about convenience. And I was talking to Javed earlier, and the other thing is control. So one of the things that we've been focusing on over the last couple of years is developing our customer portal and its capabilities. Now, you know, today, you know, a customer want to be able to carry out what do you call, you know, servicing of their policy anytime, anywhere on the go, and also when it comes to purchase, it's all about, you know, having that seamless digital experience, right? So today's customers do not want to be, you know, what do you call, sitting in front of somebody and you know, filling up a paper form, and you know, because that's just going to, you know, they'll just walk away from all of that, right? So today we've got solutions such as digital advice. We've got, you know, which basically helps you carry out needs analysis and throws you recommendations. We've got the ability to, what do you call, a customer can go online and see you know, different quotes, different solutions, compare. They can purchase digitally, and you've got a number of solutions that actually enable that. Now, when it comes to life insurance policies, like I said, it's you know, it's a long-term policy. You've got 10 years, 15 years that the policy is with the customer for. And during that course of time, you may have a number of different things that may happen in terms of life events like marriage, childbirth, you know, birth of a child. A customer may want to increase his savings or buy a new product or what do you call, nominate new beneficiaries. Now, customers are not, you know, wanting to, you know, wait in a queue or go on a, you know, phone call and get those things done. They want to be in control. They want to do it right then and now. Those are the kind of things customers expect, and those are the things that will attract customers to us. And the other thing that we've been focusing on is to drive insights out of the interactions customers have with us. So we've got solutions like Google Analytics that works on our platform, which helps us gather insights. And we've got a program known as the VOC, or the Voice of the Customer, within the business, which helps us look at these insights and drive constant improvements. So these are kind of things that has been the key focus areas for us over the last couple of years. Now, yes, well-being, I was talking to Javed about, is something that we just started talking about. So legacy insurers, rewind 3-4 years back, 4-5 years back, they were all on paper and forms and things like that, right? That's just changing now. So this is sort of new stuff that we want to talk about and we want to get into, because right now it's all about prevention.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna ask for a quick audience poll over here. How many people get excited talking to an insurance company when they use the word Google Analytics? How many of you sat up leaping out of your seats because we heard Google Analytics over there? One person? 2 people? Seriously? Google Analytics excited you guys? We really need to talk after this. But Javed, how are you? This is just it. That's not exciting, okay? No. You don't want millennials. You don't want boomers. You want Gen X. You want Gen Z. Saying, "Ooh, we've got analytics," ain't going to excite them. Yeah. How are you going to do it?
No, but you see, that's where both incumbents and disruptors have to work together, right? Yeah. So everyone needs to be able to bring, put their hands together to be able to bring this full circle. We mustn't forget the financial services space is incredibly regulated, right? Wherever you go across the world, and that's why Zurich does what they do. I'm also trying to get a partnership out of this, yeah. So, so it's very regulated, this space, and with what's been happening around the world lately, it's also very interesting to understand that the reason that we have legacy insurers, like you call Zurich, right, is because they're able to, and they have been able to manage regulation for the longest time. We mustn't forget that corporate also have shareholders and therefore need to turn over a profitability on an everyday basis, right? That's essentially why they go to work every day. When it comes to startups and innovation, we have the liberty or the freedom to be able to do what we do because they do what they do, right? So we can put the customers at the center of everything that we build, right? And that's why I was able to say to you all that nobody wants to buy insurance in the morning, but you can't have a day in your life without insurance. You can't drive your car without insurance, right? The way everybody wakes up wanting to be healthier, right? I wake up in the morning and the first thing I check is my recovery score on my Whoop to see how well I slept the night before. What I need to be able to do now is connect the dots between the two. If I slept really well and I look after myself, I should have to pay a smaller premium. Unfortunately, today in the world of insurance, that doesn't happen. Insurers price people at the back of buckets and actuarial science, right? So statistics and probability. If you're a woman of this age, that's what your premium is going to be. It doesn't matter how healthy you are. If you're a man of this ethnicity, this is what your premium is going to be. It doesn't matter whether you're a couch potato or you take 10,000 steps a day. It doesn't matter what circle of life or what school of life you follow. It depends on which box you fit into. And that's what we're able to do as a disruptor, as an innovator, is bring real-time technology real-time data through cutting-edge technology to be able to figure out what works for the customer and then tie that back into how legacy insurers go about pricing things. This is sort of the second wave of insurtech, or the technology revolution within financial services. I think the first stage, and hats off to the guys at Policybazaar Insurance Market that came in and really created an incredible level of transparency in the market by giving people the ability to see what insurers actually charge and then find the right product for themselves. I think this next wave of shared value propositions like Wellx is actually going to speak to the future generations. And what do I get back in return from my insurance company? If I don't fall sick, what is the insurance company doing for me? Right? I'm paying a premium every year. What am I getting back in return? You're getting well-being. And that's something that's priceless, right? You cannot quantify how healthy you feel until you have a health score. And then that health score you can then take back to your insurer and say, I'm healthy, please reprice my premiums. And that's the mission that we've set out to be able to accomplish, is how do you build those healthier, happier, and more resilient communities at the back of the financial services, being able to fund your well-being.
Okay, Sharad, Brian, I'm going to ask the two of you. Leave aside the insurance side, because yes, everyone needs insurance in some form or the other, whether it's medical, car, life, whatever it is. you're doing financial products that are not just insurance. You're doing investments, you're doing equities, you're doing commodities. I'm guessing you're doing crypto and all of that. How do you attract this new consumer that we're talking about to old school products like that?
Well, if you look at the new age consumers that have evolved now, if you look at crypto is all out on social media. Crypto is out there. And there is this notion that if you're not in crypto, then probably you're passé. You're not cool, rather. So, it's a lot of this media that's been generated around it. And then you have companies like Robinhood and others who've suddenly opened up the GameStop kind of issue that happened. It suddenly opened up eyes of the youngsters to this whole investment thing. And up till now, people were just, the youngsters typically used to say that, okay, let me kind of just have a good time initially. I'll think of investing only after 30. But then what's happening now is you have youngsters earning much more at their start level, whether it's software companies or wherever that they are working. They look at this whole thing about, they don't have this longer time horizon that I want to save for my investment, my home. Everything is instant. I don't want to invest in a house. I don't want to invest in a car. I'd probably invest in experiences. Now, how do I do that? I'll just start investing, make some quick bucks, go on a holiday, come back. So that whole gratification is so instant. So the whole psyche is changed, and that's helped us, the investment industry, so to say. So youngsters nowadays, and to add to it, the whole financial app and all the convenience that's been out there is suddenly making it far more easier for them. There are no entry barriers, as I said earlier also. And the biggest thing is the youngsters are looking for everything on their screens. So as long as they're consuming the news about investment on their screens through a lot of these influencers, YouTube guys talking about it, they have a ready app there, they have payment wallets there, it's far more easier to just start and explore. So I would say a lot of other outside factors have made it far more easier for us to, sell our product to this new segment.
Brad, does that apply to the market that you're trying to reach as well? You talked about gamifying some of your services, attracting people, make it more fun, make it cool, as Sharad said. Is that happening?
Definitely. Well, I think when I look at teen banking, I think to me it's more about teenagers participating in the economy, and the young people that I speak to, it's part of their evolution in life. It's like when they get their first phone, it's a very important little step in their life when they get their first iPhone or their first phone. And getting your first card is similar to that. Now, in terms of actually educating them to understand the financial system and to get prepare themselves for life, you've got to be quite specialized in the way you do it. It's not going to be showing 30-minute tutorials on what is compounding interest. It's going to be nudging behavior, making it fun, rewarding good things, perhaps penalizing bad behavior, in very small, nudgy ways that it makes it more engaging. Believe me, when I look at the younger generation now, they're extremely entrepreneurial. They're immediately thinking, when I go into schools, they're thinking of owning their own business. They're not really thinking about becoming a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer anymore. They want to own their own business. So they're extremely entrepreneurial, and that sort of spirit and being able to talk about potentially having that financial independence. Imagine being in a situation where you're not reliant on your salary to make money. It resonates very well, with them. So you'd be surprised at how the young people of today are thinking about money and thinking about that kind of what financial freedom looks like to them.
Neeraj, let me ask you, and Javed talked about how you were amongst the pioneers in bringing fintech to a larger group of people. You're old school. As the name suggests, a marketplace where you can come and shop around for the best insurance policy. But in this new world that we're talking about, and whether it's post-COVID, where people are more concerned about their financial health, along with everything else that goes with it, how does an old school product, an old school service, an old school platform like yours reach out to this new generation that eventually is going to become your consumer?
So as I mentioned, right, there is a section of millennials also who are acting like the Gen Z, and those are the consumers which we deal with on a regular basis. But what we are essentially also trying to do is, and I'll flip it here, see, if you look at the entire ecosystem, fintech being the insurtechs and everything, they've really focused on acquisition. If you look at the last 5-10 years, it's been on acquisition. But really, once the consumer is in, what do you do with that consumer? How do you serve that consumer? I believe we've not done a great job as an industry on that. And what we are trying to do, at least at our end at Policybazaar, is we are now focusing on that a greater extent. See, how do you, once the consumer is in, as my colleagues mentioned, right? For example, if you're buying a health insurance, you're not claiming, what is in it for me? So we are now working on those combinations and those propositions for consumers where we are trying to understand what are they really looking at, right? They're not buying an insurance product because tomorrow they're going to fall sick. That is one part of it. But what they're also looking at is, okay, does it help me become healthier? Does it help me become as a sustainable lifestyle, right? So now what we are doing is, once the consumer is in, how do we engage with him? How do we really stand by him when he really needs it? If he is reaching out to us in a different mediums, right now, if you look at it historically, the consumer would call somebody, or there'll be a form which he'll fill in if he needs to reach out, right? Now we are seeing that drastic shift. He's saying, I don't want to do all this. Give me an app or something, I'll do self-help. What we are seeing from a consumer perspective, the consumer is ready to almost service himself. Now today, if a consumer has a problem, he just doesn't call the provider. He first goes on Google, or probably ChatGPT in the future, and will ask for a solution. And then he troubleshoots himself. Now, how do you equip such a consumer? That is what we are really working on in terms of, once the consumer is in, how do we help him become more self-aware, help him self-service himself, right? That is what we are trying to do. And I believe that is what is going to lead us to probably engaging with these Gen Zs a lot more.
Ravi, is that the best kind of consumer in financial services, the consumer that you never hear from because he or she just takes care of things for themselves? Is that the best platform to have, where you never actually have to interact because you've built such a great product that they can do it themselves?
I believe the consumer will always require some help, but the point is, when he requires help, are you there, right? That's what it is. So if you look at us, when we started, we were saying, why do you call so much, right? We learned from that. But insurance was a push product. You needed to call the consumer to buy the product. If we didn't have done that, we wouldn't be here. But what we are also migrating towards is the consumer, as my colleague also mentioned, he needs a nudge, right? But at the same time, you do not need to be intrusive, right? I believe we'll have a self-help where the consumer can do everything, but at the same time, if he needs some help, you're there. I believe the fine balance is that.
Ravi, you're nodding away. Are you in complete agreement on this?
Yeah, so I can add some of the comments, right? So we don't focus on a consumer side, we focus most on the business side, right? So we basically, from a business point of view, the business could be, either it could be insurance, it could be a wealth tech, it could be a e-commerce, it could be, you talk about any of the segments. What we offer is basically, we try to automate the payment sections, right? The payment sections is not only restricted only to payments. So payment basically includes how fast you give the response to the consumer while a consumer is making a payment, right? So now the world has moved, right, from like settlement cycles, if we talk about from a merchant's point of view, from like T+7 or T+10 days. Now in India, we have got UPI, which is like almost like a real-time settlements, right? So like if we talk about the markets likes of GCC, we are still in the process of doing those instant settlements kind of a product, right? That is the first thing. Then you talk about from a payments point of view, like merchant onboarding journeys, right? Or a customer onboarding journey, which I just talked earlier also, right? It should be automated more on a faster note. So like lots of RegTech companies are coming, right? Where you can authenticate the customers by using his Emirates ID or using his passport and all those things. So the customer journeys are become more seamless. So this is more from a KYC point of view. Now there is a automation or digitization which has happened for KYB also, right? Where you can go and check about the business details. You can do a lots of AML screening and all those things. So that basically gives a seamless experience if we talk about from a business point of view, from a consumer point of view, right?
Well, let's come back to the slightly more holistic global view over here.
Sure.
You have high regulation in many other countries in the region, which restricts a lot of what you can do, can't do. KYC is one of the things that every country now insists on. But as consumers hear more and more about products that are out there, as you said, about crypto, because they're reading it in the newspaper, it's on the media, whatever it is, do you have consumers, do you have a market asking for more in terms of financial services, in terms of financial products, and already exists? And does that then raise the bar for the industry or for governments or regulators to say we need to bring this in?
Sure. That's a great question. Let me just start off by saying that, one significant trend that we have seen in the world of finance, has been the decentralization. Where the power, at least, from the American sense, has shifted from the Wall Street to the Main Street. And, think about, as one of our panelists was talking about, the growth in Robinhood and so on, and think about the GameStop, right? So that was a very interesting phenomenon. Now, notwithstanding about those specific cases, I think what we are seeing is definitely, there is a lot of interest amongst the consumers, particularly young consumers, who want to, brainstorm their ideas into a more formalized discussion forum. I don't mean the Reddits and so on. So if we can have a formalized discussion forum where we can, basically collate different ideas as to what are the, let's say, some of the products in equity or mutual funds or cryptos and so on, where it can be directed, and perhaps could we think of some kind of an intermediation? Maybe it could be Cashee, which can pool these funds and then invest on this behalf. And secondly, coming to this particular region, absolutely yes. As we know that UAE government is putting a lot of thrust on financial education, so those who are above 18 can get free financial education on capital markets and so on. And obviously now there is a literal dearth of IPOs in other parts of the world, whereas it is booming in this part of the world, in Saudi, in UAE, and so on. So how do we channelize our young investors, to get started into this particular market slowly but steadily? It could be, let's say, $100 or $150, but then, we can play a volumes game here. So I think we need to have a more structured discussion forum and, trigger their ideas, and then probably look at a tool which can, pool these funds and then invest on their behalf and, generate some returns. I think to that extent, regulatory sandbox and, some of the initiatives by Abu Dhabi Global Market, DFM, DIFC, and so on, I think they can play a pivotal role in, pushing our young generation towards a more formalized investments. I think that would be a worthy experiment to look at.
With a number of the products and services that are represented on this panel over here, there is the danger that at some point in time, all the customers that you're trying to reach out to are going to do it themselves. Javed, you, for instance. Brad, even at your end, at some point in time, the bank's going to wake up, or banks are going to wake up and say, hang on a second, why do we need Cashee in here? We could just offer the same service for that same target segment. We don't need to pay them a commission in there. Same thing, we're an insurance company. Yeah, let's pass on, let's give everyone a Fitbit and tell them we'll bring their premiums down. Why do we need him in the middle over here? Is that a concern for a business such as yours?
So I think you have to look at that from both perspectives, right? What I led with about regulation is something that your legacy providers will always have to deal with. So if you look at it just purely from that perspective, for a legacy provider to move as quick as an innovator would move, would take them ages. And I worked for a legacy provider for 17 years, right? So I know.
But when they do, they'll just throw a shitload of money at it.
Yeah.
And hope that brute strength is going to have it function. still a concern because there's a lot more money than you have.
No, for sure, yeah. So it's about experimenting, right? And that's where the shareholders come in, right? Shareholders are expecting returns on an annual basis. To be able to provide that return, there's very little margin for error. Whereas the entire premise at the back of which a startup is created is to test and learn and adapt, right? Is experimentation. They say 9 out of 10 startups fail. And it's because innovation allows failure is why you will always need a thriving ecosystem of technology startups. And like my colleague on the right just said, this environment or this region really fosters innovation from that perspective. I think we heard a little bit earlier on as well, the youth of today are all talking about becoming tomorrow's entrepreneurs. Everybody's looking to build the next big thing. Everybody wants to become the next Steve Jobs or the next Elon Musk, right, including ourselves. And I think that desire for wanting to create some form of magic in your own space will always have an innovation community that sits out there. And as innovation leaders that are sitting on this panel today, it is our responsibility to foster that innovation, to nurture that innovation, and then to plug back into legacy providers to be able to go out and test it. Because no matter what I do, I can never equal the customer base that a Zurich has, for example, right? And it's because they've been in existence for so many years. I can never equal the credibility that Zurich has. I, myself, as a consumer, have a Zurich insurance policy. Would I like to have Wellx that sits on top of it? No doubt. But whether Wellx is here in the next 20 or 30 years, I hope it is, but whether it's here or not in the next 20 or 30 years is always going to be a question mark, but I know Zurich's going to be around, right? So you always need to have this, and I think when you've come such a long ways in terms of creating an innovation culture and an innovation ecosystem like the way this region has, and the leadership really sort of has given a lot of importance and a lot of priority to entrepreneurship in the space. I think this is a space that's not just here to stay, but that's here to evolve. There's a lot happening globally, with the likes of SVB and Silvergate, I think it was, that's really shaking up international and global dynamics in this space. I think this region and the way the kingdom's operating, the way the UAE is operating, and the excitement within entrepreneurs and startups in this space, I think now is the time. Like, our time is now to be able to create that sort of magic for that consumer at the end, because essentially we all exist on this panel today because of that consumer, right? Our time is now to create those magical experiences for those consumers.
Yeah, before I throw it open to the audience, one quick question, and any one of you can take this one. Particularly with things that have been happening in the last week, whether it's SVB, whether it was Robinhood a few months ago. At some point in time, because it's a nascent market, because you're creating new products in effectively a new industry, is there, as a business, as investors, is there always the fear that something like that goes wrong? In another part of the world, you get a knee-jerk reaction over here where the government or the regulator says, okay, we don't want any more of this, we want to go back to the way things were. Is that a concern for you as investors?
Always is, and I think it's a very difficult question for any one of us to answer because it always sits at the back of your head. I think flashbacks of 2008 resonated when I heard the news of SVB. But I think we're very blessed to be in a space that's that really pushes forward change and innovation. And I think that's the single biggest inspiration that we've got in this part of the world, is the way the leadership has always pushed the region along. And I think that gives me a lot of comfort in being where I am today.
Okay, so I know a couple of the guys here aren't too concerned about investors because they've been around long enough to have weathered any storms. But the rest of you, any concerns that regulation might change and you might be out of business the next day?
From a regulation perspective, no. Not from a Cashee perspective. We're under a bank sponsorship arrangement, so we basically leverage off the bank's license. So we're protected under the existing regulatory environment to some extent. But from an investment perspective, in heading up the investment for my company year after year, of course, the sentiment is not great. And it's, but you look at like SVB, this is again a fairly traditional bank, happens to be lending to innovative companies, but you're talking about a bank. once again, losing the trust of the people, and it always comes back to the incumbents more than the tech providers. But I think the biggest, the craziness about this the last couple of weeks is, you've suddenly got the social media enabling the spread of hysteria. And believe me, I've got a lot of VCs and stuff on my phone, and I was getting text messages saying, get out of SVB by the end of today, and I'd have no money in SVB.
Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left, so let me throw it open to the audience. Any questions? Not a single one? Okay, in that case, we're back. Very quickly, from each of you, 3-second answer. Where would you like to see your industry go?
I'll start with the investment industry. Yeah, I think the whole shift in the focus on the retail investor is what's going to drive the whole thing now. Everything is driven online. Everything is on app. You have data. You have the stimulus, where to invest, what to invest, when to invest. Everything is provided. So I think the whole brick and mortar thing is going to slowly vanish. And everything's going to be online, and people will experiment more in terms of investing into newer this thing. And the whole, once the cryptocurrency gets back into the reckoning, then a lot of change and dynamism can happen in the overall industry. So we are at a juncture where it can take off into a totally different zone, where the whole organization, everything persists online, and everything is online, basically.
Okay, Saji, your 3 seconds. Where would you like to see your industry going?
So, the insurance industry is at a point where it's accelerating transformation at this point. So, like he said, everything's going to be online, digital, and I think I'd go back to what Javed was saying. It's all about going from insurance to prevention now. I think that's where it's shifting. And yeah, I think if you look at it 2 or 3 years from now, I think everything's going to be digital, online app. There's not going to be anybody sitting in front of anybody and doing paper forms and things. It's just going to be that.
Javed?
I'd like to see a very commoditized industry get hyper-personalized. I want to see a day when insurance is not seen as a rainy day product, not a product that I can only use if I fall sick, but a product that I can use every day. And the only way to do it is to flip it on its head and try to understand what is it that the consumer wants every day, and not not only on the bad days.
Ullas, the larger picture again.
Yeah, so I'll come to some very important basics, which is to reduce the information asymmetry, to have a flatter organization and a leaner cost structure. We have to be zealously working to ensure that the costs are reduced and kept as minimum as possible, so that ultimately we'd like to see the companies in the green zone. They are able to achieve the profits. Yeah.
Nice, Ravi.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, if you talk from a technology point of view, the world would be moving more in terms of data analytics and all. And of course, companies' point of view, of course, it should be in green.
Neeraj?
So from our perspective, I believe we're going to move to an individual underwriting or a customized, personalized insurance. What we've been talking for a couple of years, I believe we're going to head towards that. And the second element is, I was speaking to a couple of consumers, right? And he really told me, when it comes about claim, please don't hassle me, just give me the claim. Right? Like, that is where we need to head to as an industry, where we genuinely, what we promise, we deliver on that. And we bat from the consumer side, both as an insurer, as a distributor, and everybody. I would love to do that.
Brad?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I see the future world being much higher level of financial literacy, making a lot less mistakes than perhaps what our generation have made, and just sort of encouraging the inclusion of people within the financial system, setting up a much better life.
Perfect. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a great panel. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being a great audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.